Welcome to the Elevated Trader Podcast. I am Dr. Kristin Kidgel.
And I am Tracy Ball. Join us every week as we journey into becoming better traders.
We believe becoming better traders involves elevating our skill, our mindset, and our health. In each episode, we will discuss the current book we are exploring, and we invite you to join us on this journey.
Are you ready to elevate your trading, mindset, and health to the next level? Let's do this.
Welcome back to part 4 of Money Grows on Trees by Jerremy Alexander Newsome. And today we are talking about more, what do you think, subliminal unconscious beliefs that need to be uprooted and ripped out?
Of course, that's what this whole book is about. It's the root of the trees.
The bad roots. So only the good roots can grow. And then the money grows on the trees. We're pruning our trees. Right.
So today
we're pruning the roots.
So today's episode is actually on greed.
Epiphanies, you want to start?
So greed. Do you feel greedy if you have money? Or do you think that having money makes you greedy? Right?
Do people call you greedy?
I have never felt that. I've never experienced that. In fact, I've actually had the opposite type of reaction from friends and family, and I've felt very judged because of a lack of money, not because of getting money. So I'm not quite sure if I've ever had that sense of if I have so much money, I'll be greedy. It's not that at all. And then in addition to that, I feel that greed is kind of the wrong word. To me, when you say greed, it's synonymous with unsharing. And I am the furthest person from unsharing that I know of. I am more than giving with my time, more than giving with my resources, more than helpful. I want to help. I don't think that I struggle with that aspect of greed. Because like I said, when you say to me greed, I think of ungiving. I think of the stooge or the Scrooge, right? That to me is greed.
Mm-hmm. So, by the way, he quotes one of his favorite authors, Jensanchero. Did I say that?
Yeah.
Sanchero? The book that she wrote, You're a Badass at Making Money. By the way, I love all her books, and we are going to be reading those. She recommends that you think about a time when you felt judged about how much money you were or were not making. That moment I just described was one of the many that popped into my head after some thought. So I thought, okay, well, maybe somebody didn't say it to me, but maybe I judged myself not making a certain amount of money. And then I was like, oh, for some reason, I don't know why that one stuck out to me, because I agree with you. I don't feel that I'm greedy with my money because I love tipping and I love giving to good causes and I love spending and traveling and taking kids and family and friends. And I already know, if I'm making that 14 million a year, what I'm going to be doing with all of it. So with that said, was there anything else you got out of this chapter? Because I have a couple of good takeaways, I think.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I need to evaluate whether or not those feelings of judgment were coming from other people or were they coming from myself, right? So I think that that's definitely something I need to explore a little bit further, because I put a pretty hefty bar up for myself to get over, right? And perhaps all these feelings of inadequacy because of a lack of money has come from me, not from the world around me. That's a great point. So something that I need to definitely explore. But I'd love to hear your biggest takeaways.
Well, one of the ones I have written here was that he went on to say, if there was any figure in your mind that if I had this amount, I would be greedy, and that particular amount basically will block you. So I resonated with that one because I'm like, well, 500,000 a year, I don't feel like I'm greedy. $1 million, no. 5 million, probably not. So there I started getting a little, will I be judged as greedy? Will I think that I'm greedy? Blah, blah, blah. 10 million. And then then it hit me and I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling that like maybe. So that to me was that, okay, now what? And then the very next sentence was, if you are feeling that about any amount, it's already blocking you right where you are to keep moving forward to even reach those significantly lower amounts, which are still high, but you see what I'm saying? So I had to do some self-reflection that I'm going to be okay and know that I'm not greedy if I'm making 50 million a year.
What about 50 billion?
I can't wrap my head around that. So there's no way I'm going to feel greedy right now.
See, and I never came up with a single number that made me feel greedy. It all comes back to my time and my willingness to give back. And I have that. Now, maybe this is fitting because in another chapter, we're going to be talking about being able to say no, because I think not being able to say no or having to say no is what's going to make me feel greedy, not having a tremendous amount of money. Make sense?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes,
totally.
We'll touch on that later.
Because you have a direct tie subconsciously, which is a good tie, right? That your currency that you're bringing in is connected to your value. With this particular chapter, he says, bottom line, if you do anything for anyone else at any time, by any definition, you are not greedy.
Exactly.
Boom.
There you have it. Boom. Money isn't a thing. It's an idea. And if you want more ideas, you have to think different thoughts. This was another quote that I took out of that chapter. I think that's great.
Okay. Ooh, was it this chapter? Because that's a great
that was this chapter
quote.
And I think it's really good because, again, if you feel like you're greedy, if you think that, those are ideas. And if you don't want to be greedy, then you need to start thinking different thoughts. So start acting it, start thinking that you're not greedy, start behaving in that direction, and it'll come. Because it's an obstacle, right? If you have a fear of being greedy and you think that money will bring you that title, then you are repelling money. Plain and simple. You're going to avoid it at all costs, maybe subconsciously. So
and this is all subconscious stuff. So I just jumped ahead to where I had this next index card, a couple pages ahead. And literally it just basically says the same thing, but at the very bottom, if you hold that for you, it says mic drop, boom. And that's kind of what he says in the book, right? He's like, I can end right here. I don't even need to talk anymore. You guys go feast on that one for a bit. But when I flipped the card over, one of the other things that stood out with me, or to me, is that he dives into a poem that he freaking loves. He talks about this poem all the time. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Do you remember the author? Marianne Williamson. The poem is Our Deepest Fear. So on page 47 and 48, if you feel like jumping to that, it says the basic struggle he believes is that changing who we once were to become who we need, and I put want, to be, isn't easy. Change isn't easy. And maybe that's the riff with a lot of us. We got to change. We got to self-reflect. We got to look in the mirror.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with that self-reflection, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is a lot of us view ourselves as who we want to be versus who we already are. And that prevents us from really seeing where change needs to occur, right? And we wonder why things aren't happening. And it's kind of a place of denial to some degree. So you really have to be able to be honest with yourself and recognize who you really are. And that could be painful. It can be very painful.
And it's hard to just self-reflect all by yourself. Like, you need a friend, you need a coach, you need a mentor, whatever. Because I'm pretty sure if I had to reflect back in time, it was always somebody that I had huge trust in that you can be vulnerable with. Oof. But what I do know about myself, only because in retrospect and people telling me, is that change is very easy for me.
Interesting.
And I kind of have to agree with that. When people struggle with change, I'm like, what's the problem?
I embrace it too.
Let's just go do it.
I embrace change. Love change.
Okay.
And it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
It's interesting that you have that same type of a love for change, or that embracing of change, because your upbringing is very, very different than mine. So true. I would think that it would be the opposite for you just based on that fact, but Yeah. Interesting. And when I say that your environment or the way that you grew up, you pretty much, I mean, you live currently in your hometown, right?
I do.
Okay.
But I have not always lived here. But yes.
Okay.
I do.
And I have no clue where my hometown was.
Okay. And then there's that.
Right.
How many people can say that?
Yeah. Like I had 13 elementary schools, 5 high schools. I've moved every 6 months to a year. I never.
Oh, yeah, change is super easy for you.
Super easy for me. Now I'm curious, how do you think that if somebody's out there that's feeling like having money makes them greedy, how do you think that that can affect their ability to trade the stock market?
I think self-sabotaging, which is unconscious.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Self-sabotaging. So if you ever find yourself in a position where you feel like you're doing really well, and then all of a sudden the pot just falls right out of the bottom and you don't know why, take a look inward and see if you have any of these underlying rooted thinking patterns that may need to be pulled out, exchanged for something different, because those could be the cause of some of your self-sabotage, some of that roller coaster ride, as you will. Mm-hmm. Okay.
For sure.
It's just one possible.
So he wraps this chapter up discussing, we always know or can describe easily our worst case scenario, but to maybe consider, well, let's describe our best case scenario. And then he walks through examples with that. So I thought that was pretty good. And then I just want to throw in there, because I think these were really good points, and I'm not going to go down all the steps, but he says, first, you have to sincerely believe there is enough money out there for you to have. You kind of have to stop there, because a lot of people think that money has a limit. I mean, they're printing money like crazy. The second one is you simply have to build a realistic path towards your goal. This is where most successful people begin to focus either their talents and their skills to provide massive value to myriads of people. So I can agree with that. First of all, you have to figure out, okay, what am I good at? What am I good at? Okay, I'm good at chiropractic. Love my job. But what else am I good at? But those other skills have come with time and age. But I enjoy those skills, and I do want to enhance those and use those to help so many people outside of the brick and mortar of my office.
Right.
So I can really resonate with that, and I really appreciate that. But he does mention something in Slate that maybe people don't pick up on, is you kind of have to take action. You kind of have to pick a path, and you got to start walking down it and be okay with, I got to turn right here. I feel like sometimes you have to be, here's the goal. I'm going downstream. That's where I'm headed. It's off in the distance, but you kind of have to be a creek or a river to get down that way. Mm. He did quote Tony Robbins in saying, it's better to be led by your dreams than pushed by your problems. I like that too.
Yes, there's so many great quotes. I mean, this entire book is just loaded with quote bombs.
For sure. That mental pyro maniac.
So greed is really tied in, I think, very much to the other side of this, which is led into chapter 4, which is deserving. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about the show, as well as our list of current reads, check us out at www.theelevatedtrader.com.
Remember to subscribe and share if you found value in today's episode. See you next week.